This video is going to be a film study look at what the Detroit Lions offense under Ben Johnson can get accomplished against this Rams defense in Week 1 Sunday Night Football. This revamped Los Angeles Rams defense that is under defense coordinator Chris Shula. I didn't know he was of those Shulas. Basically, I think he's the grandson of Don Shula. Despite losing Aaron Donald and Ernest Jones, who was a very talented 24-year-old inside linebacker, really shocked me last week when he was dealt away. He had 140-plus tackles last year, 4.5 sacks, 14 TFLs, very active in the 2 games that I was able to see him primarily at the Ravens late in the season when the Ravens won in overtime on a punt return, and then in Detroit in the wild card playoff game. I thought he was an impressive young talent for being a third-year inside linebacker to be dealt. I don't know all the specifics, but 2 big gaps to fill there in the middle of the defense. Nonetheless, I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm as a Lions fan. I think it's still a talented front 6 or 7. Outside linebacker, edge defenders, whatever you want to call them. Byron Young, who had 8 sacks last year as a rookie. And then Jared Verse, the rookie from Florida State. Interior defensive tackles or defensive linemen in their base 3-4. Braden Fisk, obviously from FSU as well. Kobe Turner had an underrated but very impressive rookie season last year. And then Bobby Brown III as the nose tackle. I think bringing back Darius Williams was an underrated signing in free agency. His film looked really good from Jacksonville last year, and I think I had 5 games overall when I did a film study video. The Rams were able to bring him back. I believe he had begun his career there. They also signed Tre'Davious White, who was coming off an injury. Now, I think White has only played 10 games in the past 2 years with the Bills. Played his whole career there. But from a statistical standpoint, you're talking about a guy who has 18 career interceptions, 5 career fumbles recovered. If he's healthy, that's a potentially big addition to their secondary group. But losing Donald and now losing Jones, albeit through their own choice in the second matter, I think presents real difficulty for them up the middle. In the pass rush, they're hoping that Young and Jared Verse can bridge the gap there and try to get pressure. What I'm going to do in this video is take a look at the whole first possession. It's something I've already covered in film study portion before, but what I like about it is how often Ben Johnson is switching personnel groups. And what I think he's doing early on is confirming how the Rams are going to line up and what fronts or even coverages they're going to use against particular personnel groups, and then coming back and running certain plays to exploit that. So we'll get this started. We're just going to go through the whole first possession from the standpoint of what personnel group it is. I think the versatility of Sam Laporta it should be obvious to anyone. It's really going to come through in this video if I can do my job halfway well. You got 12 personnel under center, ace formation. It's compressed. Everyone's lined up really tight from the top of the numbers to the right, inward for where Josh Reynolds is, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown is on the left hash with the ball on the right hash. Super compressed formation. Nonetheless, the Rams are in a too high safety look. Corner into the boundary is off. Lions are able to successfully combo down and pin down on Aaron Donald. You get the left guard, Jonah Jackson, who's since moved on, obviously, to the Rams. And then Laporta, as the second puller, is going to wrap and block up on one of the 2 inside linebackers. It happens to be Jones. Helps spring Montgomery free for 10 yards. This drive was impressive, not just switching personnel groups, but impressive for the yards per play. Immediately goes 11 personnel on the next snap, and what you'll notice on second time through, or I'll point out, is that the Rams have subtracted an inside linebacker from the field and put a nickel defender on. So instead of a 3-4 look, they're now in a 5-1, whatever you want to call it. Some people will call it a 3-3, fine. But from an alignment standpoint, these 2 outside linebackers, edge defenders, are on the line of scrimmage. These are your interior 3. So there's only 1 inside linebacker. I'm hesitant to call it a 3-3 because what I know about a 3-3 is a 3-3 stack. So you've got 11 personnel eliciting the 5-1 look or the 5-1 nickel personnel, and the Mike linebacker Jones is pretty much on the midline. They go 3 into the boundary. Why? Because Ben Johnson knows the nickel's going to be here to twins, and there's going to be a safety there. So it's 3/2 to the field. There is no way for them to cover all three of those routes unless the inside linebacker gets pushed to the boundary or the boundary side safety rolls up, which I think is what Ben Johnson wants to try to force you to do anyway. With 3 into the boundary, meaning tight end, and then Jamison Williams and the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. Unless they walk the inside linebacker over or spin down the boundary side safety and move this guy to a center field position, basically creating a one-high safety look, there is really no way for them to cover this unless they completely play man, and in that case, they're still pretty much out-leveraged by someone. Stays in 11 personnel on the very next play. 11 personnel toss, and again, taking advantage of the fact that there's only one inside linebacker, in this case Jones, with 2 edge defenders, nickel to the field, tossing you into the boundary where the tight end is, shows you the versatility of St. Brown. This is what most teams do with 2 tight ends. Engage an edge defender with a tight end, and then bring a second tight end in motion to basically kick him out, expand him further in that direction. I think I need to improve my mouse pointer. It's taking a longer time for it to write, so forgive me if it's delayed on you guys' screen, but I'll give you the end zone angle of this one so you can see it. Again, 11 personnel, gets the nickel lined up for the Rams. 53 pretty much stacked on the midline, kicked over a little bit into the field side A-gap. Initial engagement by the tight end on the outside linebacker D-end. I think it's Ragnow that loses here pretty much. He's winning now, but he's not able to hold off 95. He's able to cross his face. Still ends up being a 5-yard gain on 2nd and 4, so that's a win for the offense. Immediately goes back to 12 personnel. Motion St. Brown across. So you can see what the Rams have done. Now they've brought the inside linebacker back on the field. The nickel defender is off. So by going twins to the field against their base defense, you're forcing the coverage to be known. 2 receivers to the field. This is an outside linebacker, Byron Young, in fact. He's apexed out, lined up over number 2. Why? Because the nickel is not there. Because they cannot put the nickel there because he's not on the field. The 12 personnel group by the Lions, at least in this case, was eliciting their base 3-4 defense early in the game. Nearly a great play by the boundary side corner. I think it's 44. As soon as he sees this action here, we're talking about 44, he totally betrays his area of responsibility. He knows the route that is being run, the dig from the opposite side, and he almost gets there. Goff sticks this throw in. This guy should not be here from a coverage standpoint. So a beautiful example of, I think, someone knowing the play. Unfortunately for him, fortunately for the Lions, but unfortunately for 44, he didn't get there. I think it's a great example of a guy who probably did a lot of film study, understood the personnel group and formation, and once he got those dual blocking on the edge by Laporta and Brock Wright, betrayed his area, and you can see what happened. Laporta wide open up the right sideline. Of course, these guys are reacting, but Goff has yet to throw the football. You certainly could have looked at possibly coming back to that in that game, but the Lions really didn't have to. Everything they did on offense worked for the most part. Immediately go to 21 personnel because they know that the Rams are going to stay in their base. Montgomery kind of gets the skipping run, weak side power concept. So they're kicking out with the fullback, Kabinda, who I think is gone. I'm not sure if he's even in the league at this point. And then Jonah Jackson pulling. He's going to wrap up to the front side inside linebacker. They get the backside inside linebacker closed off. Rams were in their too high safety look. Just not enough people there to defend the boundary side run. Seems like a lot of right-handed football plays into the boundary to me. You guys have to let me know if you feel like that's accurate, number one. Number two, if that's the way you see it, because the ball seems to have been on the right hash pretty much the whole damn time here. Again, 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, weak side power into the boundary against their base 3-4. I think you may see a lot of 12 personnel. That's going to be the second half of this video. And again, that's going to be the part that I think illustrates the versatility of Laporta. I don't know what Jamison Williams was doing here, stepping forward 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage. No, how come that's not a penalty? But it's 11 personnel, so that inside linebacker are referred to as off the field. The Rams have caught on to the pattern in terms of attacking to the boundary. Here's the nickel defender set to the boundary where you have twins. You normally don't see the nickel defender set into the boundary. Motion to the boundary, quick screen to St. Brown. I think Ben Johnson called this play unsure of where the nickel defender would be. So he thought that maybe the outside linebacker would apex out there to the twins and he could get a numerical advantage. In this case, the outside linebacker and the nickel defender happened to be over there, so there's a little bit less of an advantage. Nonetheless, on a 2nd and 3, St. Brown's still able to pick up 5 yards and get a first down. You have nothing negative that has occurred on this drive at all. Totally manipulating the Rams defense, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm biased, rooting for the Lions. You call me a Lions fan, whatever you want to call me. I don't care. I recognize the brilliance, and when you see early possessions absolutely scalding the defense all over the field, you just have to give credit where it's due. I did so when the Chiefs came into Baltimore in the AFC Championship game and totally blew away the Ravens' vaunted and highly regarded defense on the first 2 possessions. In fact, 3 of the first 4 possessions. 11 personnel defense, and now since you've got trips, the inside linebacker, the only inside linebacker, is really kicked far over to the field. I do wonder about some stuff back here to this side. And you can see the Rams are really committed to leaving the boundary side safety over there no matter what they get to the trips. You have other options with trips out of a 5-1 look. You could walk the OLB out some and kind of prevent this outside release by the tight end. Theoretically, you could walk a safety up and roll the other safety back to center field and allow Jones to stay on the midline, stay stacked on the center and the quarterback. In this case, they did really neither of those. They just moved Jones over. Laporta gets a free release into the flats with the nickel defender dealing with St. Brown and Jamison Williams switch routes. Jones is stuck. He knows where he, quote, should be. I don't mean from an assignment standpoint. I'm talking about where the threat of the route is. Beautiful design the entire drive, if you ask me. Finally coming back to 11 personnel, but now putting the tight end into the boundary and the twins to the field. Why? Because Ben Johnson knows the nickel will be here. Well, watch the motion by St. Brown. Pulls the nickel defender into the box because he had seen that already. Ben Johnson had seen the nickel defender do that on motion into the football, like towards the other side of the field. It's the fake toss, and then the little skinny slant back in to Josh Reynolds. Almost gets in the end zone. I think it goes for 8 yards. Beautiful design, the entire first drive. Will he have that much of a handle on this Rams defense in Week 1, Sunday night, having not seen them at all from the standpoint of their first-team defense playing an entire 60-minute game? I don't know. But to see this level of preparation and now see it months later, I'm even more impressed than I was back then. I know that I did a film study video on this. I cannot remember a damn thing that I said talking about it other than the fact of switching personnel groups, attacking to the boundary to their right consistently. This is the ensuing play, by the way. They're unable to get the front blocked, and Montgomery can't sneak in. They fix it on the very next play. Pretty much the same concept. It's 11 personnel run play. So they know they're only going to get one inside linebacker on the field. Edge defender is widened up here. The combo. Donald, one of the receivers, is trying to dig Byron Young out of there. Montgomery's able to squeeze into the end zone for a 1-yard touchdown. I thought this was an incredibly efficient drive back then. Looking at it one more time, it seems like Ben Johnson had this defense on a string. Different defensive coordinator, don't get me wrong. Possibly a similar scheme. Shula's been around there for a while. Am I saying that the Lions are going to come out and blow the doors off their defense early? No, not at all. I am saying, however, that Ben Johnson, the last time they met, really had 2 or 3 or 4 ways to try to manipulate their defense and gain numbers, gain leverage, possibly even as much as a full man up to the right-hand side of the field into the boundary, like you saw him attack multiple times on his first possession. So I want to go over some 12 personnel stuff. I am very interested in The Rams' base 3-4 defense against the 12 personnel groupings that the Lions can use, and particularly the formations and the ways that Ben Johnson will utilize and deploy Sam Laporta. You, as a Lions fan, you really shouldn't need any introduction in terms of the widespread nature of how Laporta can impact the game. You saw it starting in week 1 last year. This is week 13 on the road against the Chargers. Gibbs nearly gets into the end zone, really close. But this is going to be a series of plays in a row where you see the brilliance of what you can do with Laporta. I actually kind of talked about this a while ago with St. Brown. You get the first tight end to the play side, engaging the edge defender. This is Laporta in motion. Watch what he does, basically kicking out that edge defender. It's almost like a cheat block. 45 is engaged with Brock Wright and then gets blown out of there by Laporta. The second engagement, the second blocker, I should say. Borderline unfair for an edge defender. Multiple teams across the NFL use this. The Lions do as well, and certainly they did it earlier on with St. Brown. And then the vision by Gibbs to be able to bring this all the way back. I don't know if Bosa was hurt this game, so I can't speculate, but very little effort on this particular play. Focusing on Laporta again, really same formation, except you got Jumbo 12. Skipper is on the field as the eligible tight end. And you have a wham trap to the backside with Laporta. So he's on our left, and he's motioning across, and he's kicking out the defensive tackle. If you're a Rams fan and you watch this long, first of all, thank you. But second of all, just trying to give you an illustration of how versatile and how much Ben Johnson and the Lions trust Sam Laporta and all the things they can do with him. The Rams fans obviously should be incredibly happy with one of their rookies from last year, Puka Nacua. I would say Sam Laporta has similar impact because his usage as a blocker on these trap concepts is sick. You don't see too many rookie tight ends capable of blocking like this and capable of going out and beating outside corners on routes that in some cases could be summarized as man-to-man. I actually showed you this one already. Laporta downside of the screen. 12 personnel. He's going to end up blocking Ernest Jones on the F counter play. Springing Montgomery free for 10 yards on the first play of the game. Moving forward a little bit during the season, still 12 personnel. Again, why am I focusing on 12 personnel? Because it would keep the Rams' base 3-4 on the field, eliminate the nickel possibility of him being out there, and then utilize Laporta strategically to get particular matchups. This one is just raw power from the standpoint of saying, hey, we think that this guy can go ahead and beat whoever's guarding him as a backside X receiver. It's a 3rd and 2. I think Jaquan Brisker kind of knew what was up in terms of the route. Goff waits for Brock Wright to lumber over here to one of his landing points. And then Goff over the middle to Laporta, contested against Tyreek Stevenson, a very talented and physical corner for the Bears. The Bears are very fast on defense. It'll be much improved if you ask me overall. I'm talking about the defensive side. Goff sticks that throw in there to Laporta. Laporta's got X-receiver size, X-receiver hands and moves, maybe not overall speed. One of my favorite routes or matchups from during the regular season, him against Levante David. By putting 2 tight ends on the field, you can almost give up Brock Wright. And what I mean by that is you can determine the coverage by who matches up with Brock Wright. If you get a safety lined up over him in an outside corner position, and Carlton Davis III, who, oh, by the way, is obviously with the Lions at this point, lined up in the slot over top of St. Brown, well, then you know the coverage at this point. You know that it's going to be man-to-man, and you understand where you can go if you're Jared Goff. I think the 12 personnel grouping gives them tremendous opportunity for Goff to get pre-snap information. And in my experience, which I'm no expert, in my experience trying to break down the NFL and break down Jared Goff in particular, if he knows what the coverage is going to be pre-snap and you don't change anything post-snap, you're talking about 70 to 74% completion percentage, the ball being there on time, guys being able to catch it as they make their break and possibly get downfield. Another 3rd and 4, Laporta lined up as the backside X, little in-breaking route against, again, guess who? Carlton Davis III, who will be your starting left corner for the Lions on Sunday night. Ball is already out by Goff. It's kind of a glitch blitz, to be honest with you, from the Bucs. I had never noticed this during this game. Ravens used this concept extensively, and in fact, they used it against the Lions to get a free rusher off the edge from a nickel DB, and that's exactly what the Bucs do here. Goff just gets rid of the ball so quick, and Laporta makes an amazing catch despite a challenge from Carlton Davis III, 13 yards over the middle and in cut. You're talking about a guy who, I showed you the blocks from the first 3 or 4 plays, is effective and consistent with effort and getting his head, shoulder, and his hips on the correct side of the block. And oh, by the way, he can also line up an X receiver. Absolute alien of a talent, if you ask me, at tight end / wide receiver. Still 12 personnel. Still talking about what they can do. It's almost the reverse of 11 personnel. Now, the ball is technically in the middle of the field here. But watch how the Raiders react to this from their nickel look. So they have matched up with a 4-2 and then 5 DBs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know we got a lot of lines on the field, but one of these 2 guys is the nickel defender, and one of them is the strong safety rolled up. Ball's in the middle of the field, but from a formation standpoint, bunch and the running back on the same side, bunch A. You are forcing the other team to roll someone down to the bunch side. If you're in your base defense look, there's only 4 DBs on the field anyway. So this player wouldn't be a nickel or a safety. That would be an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker who's maybe walked back. My point in showing you this is if you can line up in 12 personnel and run the ball to the boundary, I'm getting away with one here because the ball's technically in the middle of the field, then you are forcing a rotation down into the boundary, and you can create man-to-man opportunities, absolute one-on-ones to the field for Jameson Williams, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you can tell Jared Goff the coverage with a high degree of reliability pre-snap, and I think that is a real issue for any defense, not just the Rams. 12 personnel down here on the goal line. That infamous 4th and 1. Craig Reynolds is on the field. Laporta is engaging, I think it's Diaby. You got combo blocks generally on the front, on the interior of the front to the end zone angle. You've probably seen this one many times. Motion across, dummy motion. The only single block here is Ragnow on Vitave, but everybody else is double teaming. They're just trying to get Reynolds downhill, give him an option to squeeze in here, and he does through that front side A gap for a short touchdown run that was important. It's not all going to be stuff dealing with the tight ends. I mean, I feel like I don't have to talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's one of those guys that's so incredible with his impact that, to me, you could almost do a film study video on him every week. But these are concepts out of 12 personnel that I love because they are half-field concepts, flood concepts, whatever you want to call them, high-low. In this case, you've got the running back out into the flats, Jameson Williams on a vertical, and then St. Brown is kind of sitting this thing down on the hash. As soon as that inside linebacker widened up with Montgomery's route into the flats, Goff is pulling the pin on the grenade, and I love the wheel from Jameson Williams. It threatens the corner and forces him to get off here. Eventually, you can turn this into the wheel sit, come back, whatever you want to call it, to the sideline that I think is pretty much open all the time for 4-3 guys like Jameson Williams. Another half-field concept. Why is this good against base defenses? Because you can only rotate to one side. You've got 2 safeties on the field and 2 DBs. So you can't you can't do what the Raiders did on that run play I showed to the bottom side of the screen, the left-hand side of the offense. You can't drop down one safety to one side and have the nickel defender here because you only have 2 safeties on the field. In this case, it's a half-field concept with Skipper and I think Laporta blocking up to the top side, 2 vertical releases or vertical stems, and then a swing route to Gibbs, 8 yards to the left side. It's too easy. I think that I know nothing about the Rams defense other than they're a base 3-4 team, and in the playoff game, the wildcard game, they were in their base against 12 personnel, and they were in their nickel against 11. If that holds true, I wonder about some of these concepts, these flood concepts, high-lows play action run out of 12 here, and then boot into the boundary, making things available and easy for a guy like Sam Laporta. I think the Lions have an excellent opportunity to come in here early and try to take advantage of some of the same things. Manipulate the Rams defense from a personnel standpoint, 11 personnel, 12 personnel, maybe jumbo 12, maybe jumbo 21, something like jumbo 22, something that forces the Rams to juggle back and forth between who's on the field and who's not, number one. Number two, losing Donald and Jones is a talent drop-off. They have talent behind them. I guess they have commensurate talent to generate pressure on the quarterback in Verse and Byron Young. But anytime you lose someone like Aaron Donald, who was still able to have an impact clearly, it's going to be a deficit to try to make up for. Can the Rams, with a new defensive coordinator, albeit one that I think he's been on staff there with the Rams and McVay since 2017, basically since McVay showed up. So it'll be an interesting dynamic, not just Matthew Stafford coming to Detroit, his former city, his former team, to face Jared Goff once again, but the dynamic of the Rams defense trying to match up and keep up with all of the things that Ben Johnson's going to throw at them, particularly early. I think Ben Johnson has the advantage here, and I might be wrong. I may end up being way wrong, but I trust in his game planning ability, number one. Number two, I think he runs plays early on to check things for later. And if you get points out of the first 2 or 3 possessions, if you come out of here in the first 2 possessions with 10 points, or maybe even the first 3 possessions with 10 or 13, I think you're in a really great place as a Lions team because Johnson sets things up for later. I'm not saying he doesn't want the early plays to succeed, but my, the first possession against the Rams in a wild card game was ridiculous how efficient and effective all of those concepts were, and he was setting things up for later on in the game. I think there's some real genius there. Huge fan of Ben Johnson. You guys should know that by now. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section the flow of what I was trying to show from the standpoint of how they might attack the Rams based upon what they did in the wild card game, which is certainly LA's staff has had a chance to look at too and study in great detail. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you did enjoy the video, you think other Lions fans would enjoy it as well, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.